Bannon was on one side, a self-made man with working-class roots who rose from relative obscurity to become a major shaper of the right. He was a driving force behind many of Donald Trump's most controversial policies. And on the other side, David Frum, in many ways the consummate establishment Republican, an intellectual and regular political commentator, including here on the CBC. Frum is a former speechwriter for George W. Bush and a champion of classical liberalism. The Munk debates have featured controversial figures before, but not like Bannon. A self-described nationalist, many consider his ideas racist. Bannon denies that, but seems to relish the outrage he inspires. Ron Charles saw lots of that at the venue in Toronto.
This is where the debate over the debate got real.
No platform for fascists!
Hundreds of protesters from 40 different groups confronted the ticket holders to the debate between Steve Bannon and David Frum. Police stood between them. The protesters call both men right-wing ideologues and say Bannon doesn't deserve freedom of speech.
There's a difference between free speech and hate speech. That's the difference.
Steve Bannon is an ultra-right, soft on the Ku Klux Klan kind of racist. He wants to expunge freedom of speech. He wants to, incinerate people who disagree with his, he wants to target populations, people of color, Jews, Muslims, Arabs.
The protesters took a moment to remember victims of last week's Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. Organizers say there's a link between Bannon's ideas and that tragedy.
When people like this are given platforms, it has a death count. And that's the message that we're trying to get out to people today.
But many people who bought tickets to the sold-out event say it's important to air Bannon's views.
I don't necessarily support him in any way, but if you make people afraid to express their views, then they'll hold those views perennially. They'll keep there's no way to debate them and change their minds.
Several of the ticket holders said they can appreciate the protesters' desire to ban Bannon, but felt a need to hear him.
This is a perfect opportunity to come out and sort of hear different opinions. As Canadians, that's part of who we are, and that's part of what we do, is that we give everyone the opportunity to sort of talk and debate.
I understand their perspectives, but at the same time, I'm really interested in hearing what he has to say because I want to know what we should be fighting against.
We've got medics over here, you come with me.
Some protesters said police pepper sprayed them. Officers made a few arrests, but otherwise the protest against the debate was loud but peaceful. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
Those who were inside tonight heard this motion debated. Be it resolved that the future of Western politics is populist, not liberal. Arguing for Bannon, the renegade populist. Arguing against Frum, the Washington insider. There are restrictions on how much we're allowed to show you, but here's a taste.
The only question before us, is it going to be a populist nationalism that believes in capitalism and deconstructing the administrative state and giving the little guy a piece of the action? Or is it going to be a Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders type of populist socialism?
It is absolutely true that liberal democracy is in trouble now because of the failures that have happened in the past, because of the financial crisis, and because of lost wars or unsuccessful wars. And it was true that liberal democracy in the 1930s got into trouble because of mistakes that were made. There would have been no fascism had the 1920s led to permanent success. The failures of a good system are not a reason to turn to an evil one.
Donald Trump is a transformative president and a historic figure. He's going to be in your lives 10, 20, and 30 years from now. That's a Kafkaesque novel, isn't it? It is.